So if you'll open your Bibles along with me to Luke chapter 16. Luke chapter 16. We spent a long while in chapter 15, but it was worth it. And now, as promised, moving forward into chapter 16. If you found your place, that's good. Now go back to chapter 12. I mean it. Do it. Go back to chapter 12 because actually, while we're moving forward into chapter 16, if we don't get refreshed, if we're not up to learning our lessons on where we've been, you will not at all understand where we're going. Just trust me on that. In fact, I think that's true of life as a whole. If you have not learned your lessons from previous chapters, you can't begin to understand where you're at. And when you get into Luke chapter 16, you'll see. We'll get there in a minute, but we got to go back and just look at where we've been and get the context once again. And here in Luke chapter 12, it says, "Under these circumstances, after so many thousands of the multitude had gathered together that they were stepping on each other, Jesus began to say to his disciples, first of all, 'Beware of the leaven of the Pharisees, which is hypocrisy.'" So here's this circumstance, a crowd of people so great, each of them supposedly wanting to get close to Jesus, but because there's only so much room around him, they're actually literally stepping on one another. And it's, you know, if you could imagine it and you weren't shocked and you weren't getting stepped on, it would be comedy. It's like this, how crazy is this? You want to get closer to who? And what are you doing to your brother as you tried to get there? And Jesus said in those circumstances, watch out for something. It's very subtle. It's like leaven, but like leaven, it'll invade and permeate the whole group. And that subtle thing is called hypocrisy. It's playing games. It's being phony. It's putting on an act. And he says, watch out for that. Later on, we'll see, he says, watch out. Beware of every form of greed, every form of covetousness, every form of thinking that you'd be more if you had more. And he says, watch out for that. And while he's saying that, he gets interrupted. He says there in verse 4, "I say to you, my friends, don't be afraid of those who kill the body and have no more power than that." He said, don't worry about what anyone else can do to you, not just stepping on you, even if they were to kill you. What someone else does to you is not the real danger and the trouble. And while he's giving this wonderful teaching, we've been there, we've looked at it, while he's right in the middle of it, a guy blurts out. A guy says there in verse 13, someone there in the crowd, in this crowd where they're stepping on one another, someone blurts out and says, "Teacher, tell my brother to divide the family inheritance with me." This guy has not heard anything about the Bible study. He's probably been one of the ones throwing the most elbows to get close enough so that Jesus could hear him say, because he comes with an agenda, and he says, "This is my agenda. Would you just make my brother play fair? Would you make him divide the family wealth with me?" And Jesus answered him saying, "Man, who appointed me a judge or an arbiter over you?" Jesus said, "Hey, you're asking me to play umpire over a game that I don't even play. I'm not going to arbitrate the rules of a game that I won't even get involved in." And then he said to all of them, "Beware, be on your guard against every form of greed. For not even when one has a whole lot does his life consist of his possessions." You know, what does your life consist of? In the previous chapter, chapter 11, Jesus, when asked, "How do we pray, Lord?" They saw something powerful. They saw something peaceful in his prayers, and teach us to pray. And he said, it's really simple. He simply said, "Our Father, give us today what we need to eat. And forgive us for the way that we tend to step on one another. Forgive us for the fact that others have stepped on us and we've stepped on someone else." But that's the essence. That's your kingdom. May your kingdom come. And the fact is that even if we're sincerely wanting to draw close to God, we can quickly become insincere, and we can find that we're transgressing, trespassing, stepping on toes, stepping on turf. All that prayer will keep us from doing it, but the Lord says, watch out, be on guard against every form of greed, every form of covetousness. Watch out for the tendency to play that game in a Christian crowd. And he says, you need to be watching out for that. For even if you have a whole lot of stuff, he says your life doesn't consist in of your possessions. And of course, the great question to ask is, what does my life consist of? What is your life all about? You know, the very way that Jesus taught us to pray ought to tell you a lot. Your life is a lot to do with who you are in relationship to your Father. It has everything to do with family and brothers and sisters, and that's the focus. What does your life consist of? What are you worth? Can you open up your bank book and tell me? Can you show me, what are you worth? What's your net worth? Is it about the chemicals that make up your body? You're not worth a whole lot in that sense. But is it about the money that you have? Jesus said, what would it profit you if you gained the whole world and lost any part of the essence of who you are? What is your life? What is your soul? What are you made of? And when you start to think about that, don't just think about yourself. Because yes, you're very valuable, but valuable as a part of something even bigger, a part of a body, a part of a composite life. So all of that we've been seeing up to this point. And then in Luke chapter 15, we saw that Jesus gives us great insight about true valuations, true worth. What are we worth? What does your life consist of? And just to remind you, there's the lost salt, the lost sheep, the lost coin, the lost sons, and in all of that, Jesus comes to seek and to save the lost. And again, God so loved the world, the whole world, that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believes on him wouldn't have to stay lost, wouldn't have to continue to perish, but would have everlasting life. And everlasting life is knowing God. Now, you can't possibly know God unless you know how much you're worth. And again, these stories about the lost salt, coin, sons, sheep, is to show that, look, God prizes you. God values you so highly. He gave his only begotten Son. And again, I'm not going to go over all the parables, all the pictures, but it's to help you to understand. I hope that you can believe. If you can't understand, please believe. Your life matters immensely to God. Whether that makes any sense to you, whether your life means much to you, or maybe your life doesn't mean a whole lot to anyone else, just please believe. You are precious to God. And I don't think you can honestly say, I know him, unless you know who he is. And who he is one who treasures your life. He doesn't treasure your treasures. He's not out to get what you got. It's you. And the more you see that, the more you'll begin to experience your life, the real value of life, the real preciousness of life. So you see, when this guy blurts out in the middle of it, and maybe you're all too polite to blurt out, but maybe your own brain is blurting out things. You're not hearing anything that's being said so far because you're already, here's my agenda. Here's the thing I'm thinking about today. I'm sorry for that. Because actually Jesus is saying the kind of things that will just quiet you and comfort you and encourage you and teach you how to live. Here, this guy blurts it out. He says, tell my brother to divide the family wealth. It's eating me up because he's taken what doesn't belong to him, and he's all eaten up by that, just like you might be about a family quarrel or something going on at work. And this guy's got that on his mind, and he's asking Jesus to do something that's absolutely absurd. How do you divide the family wealth? Because the true wealth of the family is a living thing. The wealth is the community, unity. The community, to divide the community, anything with division and divorce and separation. I got what's mine, you got what's yours, fair, even, Stephen, we go our separate ways. That's a loss. The real wealth of the family is the family, always. And for this guy to say, make my brother divide it, it's kind of like the Old Testament days of wise King Solomon, where two women come fighting over whose baby is this, whose child is this. One is the true mother, the other is someone who just wants the kid for whatever reason. But the true mother has a true love for the kid. And Solomon can't figure out, each one presents their evidence. There's no DNA back then, at least no one knew how to test it. So how do you know? Solomon, you know the story. He says, okay, give me a sword. You want me to divide the kid? I'll divide the kid. And he acts like he's going to just have the kid cut in half. And one woman says, no. Give the baby over to the other woman. And of course, Solomon knows there's the true mother. Because true love lets go. I'd rather see my child live with someone else than be cut in half and I get my half of the dead part. And it's kind of like that. This guy blurts out and says, I want what's mine. And he's asking the Lord to arbitrate over a suicide and then a dismemberment of the body. And you take your part and I take mine. And the Lord won't have any of that. And there, at the high point of chapter 15, the story of the prodigal son, he portrays a family where that kind of division is going on and the ugliness of it. Again, in chapter 15, we're getting close to 16, by the way. Here in chapter 15, verse 11, Jesus gives this parable. He says, a certain man had 2 sons, and the younger of them said to his father, Father, give me my share of the estate that falls to me. And so the father divided his wealth between them. Now, dividing the money wasn't the real wealth. The father knew that. The kid didn't know it. But the father goes ahead and divides the wealth and lets the kid go. Because again, like the woman in the Old Testament, this father in the New, love lets go. You know what? I'm not going to fight you for it. You don't understand. You don't really value me or the family. But you know what? I'll give you the money. And it doesn't mean that it's not costly and a lot of hassle and a lot of trouble, but the father will go to the trouble and let the son go. And it's just money. It's mere money. How often do you hear that? It's just money. But it is. Doesn't mean it's not costly. Doesn't mean it didn't take a lot of work to get it. Doesn't mean that it wasn't a whole lot of hassle that the father went through. But in the end, it's just money. And the father knows that the real wealth is still there in his heart. He lets the son go. And finally, you know the story. The son comes to his senses. He awakens to the true family wealth. Maybe not at first, he's just hungry at first, but he comes back, and when the father runs to greet him, then he sees there's the family wealth. I walked away, I never appreciated it. Now I know it. My father's there, he loves me, he cares for me. What a wondrous story. And so it says there in verse 23, the response of the father is bring the fattened calf, kill it, let us eat and be merry, for this son of mine was dead, and he's come to life again. He was lost, he had perished, but now he's been found. And they began to be merry. And then his older brother was out in the field, and when he came and approached the house, he heard the music, the dancing. You know, he heard the sounds of heaven, so to speak. And he summoned one of the servants and began inquiring what this merry sound might be. Heaven was a foreign thing to him, and he heard that, and he said, what's it about? And the servant said, your brother has come, and your father has killed the fattened calf because he has received him back safe and sound. But again, we've read the story a few times recently. Even if you haven't been with us, you probably know this story. Even though that's a heavenly sound, that's the picture of heaven, the party, the dancing, the merriment, the reconciliation, the renewed relationships, the renewed enjoyment of relationships. Although all of that's the picture there, this older brother has no appreciation for heaven. Oh, he's a very religious man, so to speak, feels like he's never disobeyed a single rule. But he has no taste, no heart for heaven, and that's the sad thing. And so here he stands outside, it says verse 28, he became angry. He wasn't willing to go in. You know, the only reason why anyone wouldn't go in, that's not heaven to me, I don't want that. And yet his father is still his father, our amazing father. He comes out, and he began to beg him. But he answered and said to his father, look, for so many years I have been slaving for you. I have never neglected a single command of yours, and yet you have never given me even a little goat that I might be merry with my friends. But then when this son of yours came back, the one who devoured your wealth with harlots, you killed the fattened calf for him. Now here's a guy who, he might say it's all about righteousness, it's about what's fair and right, and no doubt he feels totally justified. We typically have to before we get that angry. But, we're kind of outside the picture. We're looking at it and we're going, what is up with that? And the fact is that this older son is still hung up on money. The younger son got the money, went out, threw it all away. He's back, and now he realizes the real wealth, the real heaven of heaven is the Father loves me. But the older son is still hung up on money. He's like, my brother went out and wasted. I've been working for peanuts all these years. I've been slaving all these years. My brother wastes all the money. Now he comes back, and in fact, you never even gave me a little goat. You know, he's feeling like, look, I never got all that much in terms of money. You never gave me all that much. My brother got what he got, and he threw it all away. And the essence of that, from this sense, and this is all getting you ready for chapter 16, believe me. He's still hung up on money. And the father, who realizes that's just money, that's not the wealth of the family, he said to him, my child, you have always been with me. You've always been wealthy. You've always been with me. All that is mine is yours. Man, aren't you wealthy? Haven't you always been wealthy? But we had to be merry and rejoice. Again, we had to be merry. We're wealthy. For this brother of yours, he belongs to you. You're wealthy. He's your brother. He was dead. He's now begun to live. He was lost. He's now been found. He's saying, look, the true treasure, the true wealth, it's always been yours. Can't you see it? Can't you appreciate it? No, he can't. That's the sad thing. We don't know where the story goes from there. But just bear in mind, as far as money and wealth and family and all of that goes, because it has everything to do with chapter 16, just understand that the younger brother, the prodigal son, when it comes to money, he is impoverished. You don't get the story if you don't realize that. He got all the money, he went out and he threw all the money away. He comes back, yes, he gets a good new set of clothes, he's got some new sandals, isn't that nice? He got a nice ring, and he gets a nice meal, the fattened calf, has a big party. But as far as money, he threw it all away. And it doesn't mean he's going to get it back. Doesn't mean that it didn't cost him. Sin always costs. Stupidity always costs, but you can be forgiven because the real wealth is found in forgiveness. The real wealth is found in renewed relationship. But yeah, it costs. There's scars. You've done things that you can't undo. And if this younger son, the prodigal son, if he were still, like his brother, hung up on money, having thrown it all away, and now I'll never get it back. I don't know how much it was, but maybe it was a lot. If he was still hung up on money, he would have been beating his head against the walls of heaven. He'd have been there. He couldn't have danced. He couldn't have sang. He would have been going, what a dope, what a dope, what a dope, what a dope, what did I do? You ever done that? He would have been totally caught up in the fact, what a stupid dope, what a waste, what have I done? But you know, he didn't, because something bigger came in between and eclipsed all of that. Something came and eclipsed the loss and the stupidity. And what came in the way and eclipsed and made all that go away is that I'm rich. My Father loves me. I have a family. That's the true treasure. You know, all of our sense of failing, all of our need for forgiveness, all of that will be dealt with in the light of his love. And of course, we're invited all the time. Don't just wait for heaven. The kingdom of heaven is at hand. Live in the light of his love. Dumb things are dumb things. It'll cost you. Sadly, it costs others who come near, but it doesn't mean it's the end of relationship. It doesn't mean that that's where the real wealth is found. Okay, all of that. Now you're ready for chapter 16. It says, verse 16, verse 1. In fact, Jesus said, now. He was also saying to the disciples, there was a certain rich man who had a business manager, and this steward, this business manager, was reported to him as squandering his possessions. So this man called and said to him, what is this that I hear about you? Give an account for your stewardship, for the way you've managed my money, because you're fired. You can no longer be my manager. You can no longer be steward. So this manager said to himself, what am I going to do? Because my master is taking the job away from me. I'm not strong enough to dig. I'm ashamed to beg. Hey, I know what I'll do, so that when I lose my job, they'll receive me into their homes. So he summoned each one of his master's debtors, and he began saying to the first, how much do you owe my master? He said, oh, I owe him 100 measures of oil. He said, take your bill, sit down quickly, and write 50. Then he went to another. How much do you owe my master? He said, I owe him 100 measures of wheat. He said to him, take your bill and write 80. And his master praised the unrighteous steward, this crooked manager. The master praised him because he had acted shrewdly. For the sons of this age are more shrewd in relation to their own kind than the sons of light. And I say to you, make friends for yourselves by means of the mammon of unrighteousness, that when it fails, when it's eclipsed, that they may receive you into eternal dwellings. See what I mean? Jesus tells this story about a bunch of crooks and then ends it by saying, so make friends with your money. Or it seems that that's what he's saying. And even having looked at the last couple of chapters, I still want to say, really? What are you talking about here, Lord? And you know, I think armed with the context, having gone back and looked at what we've looked at, I think you'll see, I do, what's being dealt with here. Let's go back, verse 1, not all the way back to chapter 12. Just go back to the beginning of this story, because if you were just reading through, it'd be easy to say, I don't get it. And then, maybe worse than saying, in fact, saying I don't get it is probably a good thing to do. Worse than I don't get it, you might put together a few things wrongly and say, I get it. And then go off and do a bunch of dumb things in Jesus' name. Worse yet, you might write a book about it. Worse yet, you might sell 1 million because everyone else thinks that's what it's all about. It's using money to make friends in Jesus' name. And you know what? I've heard it. And to some extent, maybe I've taught it, I've thought it. But that's not what's being dealt with here. Not in the context of everything we've seen. Back to the beginning, back to verse 1. He said this parable in this context, also saying to the disciples, there was a certain rich man who had a steward, and his steward was reported to him as wasting, as squandering his possessions. That word to squander, to waste, it's the exact same word used of the prodigal son. He just threw it all away, wasted it all. So it's similar to that previous story, and yet very different. This guy's thrown it all, but understand, he's only been accused. There's no proof, there's no evidence. It's the same word that we use for the accuser of the brethren, the devil who's the accuser. And so this guy has been accused, but it doesn't mean he's really done it. We don't know that he's a crook. We just know that some crooked crook has accused him of being a crook, and then the story proceeds on through. And it's interesting because this is a difficult parable. You read the commentaries of different people who think that they've got it, and it's all over the board. And each person trying to defend another person, saying, well, this guy really wasn't the real crook. This guy's the real crook. You know, no one says Jesus is the crook except for the atheists. They may say, why in the world would he use that parable? He must be a crook because he's endorsing crookedness by this parable. And we wouldn't do that. We know better than that. But it's just amazing how we can come up with all these different stories reading the same story, because the story really talks about who we are, not what's going on in the story. And as far as who's the crook here, you see him over and over throughout the whole. I read it all with you. We'll go back and look at it again. Who's the real crook? It's kind of like politics. It's kind of like a congressional investigation. We're going to have a congressional committee to find out who the crook is here. Oh, great. You get a bunch of... I'm going to be an equal opportunity mudslinger because it's just what tends to happen. That's why it's kind of a joke. You know, who's in power? They're doing this. Well, it's the same thing that when they were over there. You're doing this, you're doing that. And so we'll get an independent special prosecutor because they'll find out. Do you remember the last election? Crooked Hillary? Lock her up! Lock her up! And some of you probably might still be chanting that every time you see her picture, lock her up. And then there's another camp, there's another side that's saying, lock him up, lock him up. And it's not just the two who were up in the front, who were being put up in the front. It's like everyone in all of the, and now someone says, well, I lied, but now I'm going to tell you the truth. From here on out, you can trust me to tell you the truth because I told you I lied. And, you get a guy who's an expert, Robert Mueller, in the investigating of who's the crook here. And I wish that Robert Mueller were here to help me with this Bible study. We can look at it and find out who the real crook, but I think maybe here like there, they're all crooks. I think so. I think this story, everybody's a crook. Everyone's crooked in their own way. Everyone serves their own end. It's human nature. They're our brothers and sisters. You got to love them. It's family. Our Father, we're messed up. We're all wanting to split the pie and get my portion, and it's not fair that he's got more than me. It's the way our family is. It's our family. We got to pray for one another. We got to love one another. If we keep playing that game, hope we don't do it with nuclear weapons one day. Because again, God so loved the world, he gave his only begotten Son, that we can really live. But it's human nature. And here's a story about human nature, different people. Here's an accusation being thrown. We don't know if he's guilty or not. It's going to take a couple verses and then we'll see, yeah, he really is a crook. Or maybe he is. Again, some people defend him. They give all the reasons why that the boss was the crook, and so to go ahead and cut these deals for other people. Actually, if you're fixing things for a guy who fixed things to begin with, you're really the one who's righteous. And I'm not going to go there. I'm not going to try and defend anybody in the midst of this story. I got my biases, but I'm just going to say they're all crooks. Okay, so here's an accusation. You're a crook, I'm going to fire you. It says in verse 2, he called him in and he said, what is this that I hear? What's this rumor I hear about you? Give me an account of your job, of your management, for you can't be manager anymore. He's basically saying, I heard an accusation against you, bring in the evidence because you're fired. You're already fired, that's already a given. I heard a rumor, you're accused, but you're already out of the job. You can count on that, but I want an accounting. So is that fair? No, I don't think so. But again, that's the situation. I heard a rumor against you, now you're fired. So what's this guy going to do? It says in verse 3 that this manager, he has to manage. If everything else fails, I got to take care of number one, that's me. And he said to himself, my favorite counselor, wonderful counselor myself, what in the world am I going to do? It's unfair. I'm being fired. I'm being accused of being a crook. I know what I'll do. I'll be a crook. I'm already being accused of it. I'll do something. I'll cook the books. He says, what am I going to do? My master is firing me. He's taking the job away from me, and I'm not strong enough to dig. I would say you're a lazy crook. I'm not strong enough to dig. I don't like digging. I don't dig it. Lazy crook. And I'm ashamed to beg. You're a proud, lazy crook, I think. I know what I'll do. When I lose my job, I'll fix it. I'll do something so that the people who've been having business dealings with me will take me in. I'm out of a job. I don't want to work. I'm lazy. But who's going to take me in? Well, if I get people indebted to me in some way, they'll take me in. So here's what he did. He summoned each of his master's debtors. We just get 2 examples, but apparently he did this all the way down the whole book. And he brings them in and he began saying to the first, how much do you owe my master? The guy said, I owe him 100 measures of oil. And he said, take your bill and sit down quickly and write 50. Again, some clever commentators will give you all the reasons about you're not supposed to charge interest and here's why and all that. I'm just going to say he's a crook, especially the part about sit down, do it quick. Let's just cut the thing in half because, again, that seems to be the idea. I'm going to lose my job, but look, if I saved you 50 when I'm out on the street and I don't want to dig and I don't want to beg, you owe me one because we did this deal. He said, okay, take your bill, sit down quick, write 50. He said to another, how much do you owe? And he said, I owe 100 measures of wheat. He said to him, well, take your bill and write 80. Now, if the second crooked guy, because the one who owes 100 and writes down 50, he's a crook as well, right? It's not like, the manager said I could. He's just a manager. You're a crook because you take it. And now the next guy, when he says, well, the last guy, he offered a 50% discount, he's only offering me a 20% discount. Now I'm ticked off because the last crook got a better deal than I did. But we're not going to say that, and we're maybe not needing to be as quick about it, but I'm going to cut you a deal as well. So again, 2 examples is enough to know that he went down the whole books, all of the debtors. He did this sort of thing with the idea that once I'm out of a job, I'm going to have a lot of people that are going to love me. And they're going to take care of me. That's the idea. And here's the part, so far I don't think it's that complicated, but here's the part that might be stumbling. His master, and I would say his crooked master, praised the unrighteous steward, the crooked steward, because he had acted crookedly, basically, shrewdly, not righteously, but he was impressed with the crooked way that he worked because he was a crook. It's kind of like the mafia boss that gets double-crossed by one of his guys, and he comes and says, whoa, look what you did. You double-crossed me. That was really something. I'm going to have to remember that. You know what? That was really clever. I'm going to write that down in my crook book, and then I'm going to later on do that to someone else. So I'm going to give you a beer, and then I'm going to give you both barrels. You're still fired. You're still going to die. But, attaboy, and then boom, you're done. That's kind of the idea. With all these folks, all these crooks playing their crooked game, and in some ways, maybe if all you live for is the lust of the eyes, the lust of the flesh, and the boastful pride of life, that's pretty much the game. Whoever wins is the one who gets the deal. How they got the deal, that's a heavenly thing. But in this world, as long as it's legal, it must be righteous. As long as it's industry standard, it must be good. That's just the world, okay? And our nature is to kind of be tempted to live that way. So Jesus tells a story of the way it works in this world, and now here's the thing that he tells us about the real world, about real wealth. He says, the sons of this age, the people who want nothing more than the stuff of this age, those people are more shrewd in relation to other people who just want that than the sons of light. He says the way they act is more in keeping. They're playing a different game. Their interests are a different field, but here you are, the sons of light, and you can learn something from them. Not how to be crooked, but learn how to be, in our case, wise. And I say our case because I'm going to assume that you are the sons of light. You want to be the sons of light. It's not a membership card sort of thing. God is light. And God so loved the world. The only ones who won't come in are the ones who don't want to go in because they love the darkness and they'd rather just stay with their games. But the invitation, the gospel message is, look, God loves you. He values you. Your life is more than the stuff that you collect. Your life is more than the games that you play. You can be freed from all of that. You can come on in. And even if you've already thrown away your worldly wealth, you don't have to beat your head against the walls of heaven. You can rejoice because I've always loved you, and I always will love you. And the gospel message is just so amazing. And as far as who are the sons of this age, and who are the sons of light, and where do we point the finger? And I would say we're all a little bit of both, aren't we? We're all children of this age. We were born in this age. I don't see a single angel in here. I don't have the eyes to see them. All of you who I see are flesh and blood like me. And yet, sons of light, if you believe in God, if you hope in God, if you want to follow God, then we're kind of like amphibians who can live in the water or live on the land, and we're capable of being worldly and stupid, and we have that nature still. But we're also capable of living a much better life, a much freer life, if we just receive the gospel and follow the gospel. And it's kind of a one step at a time sort of thing. And it's important to understand that we have these dual natures, and we're living between two worlds. Not just the world to come, because I believe that heaven has come, but we can follow one kind of temptation to, I'm going to get it. And then, okay, you got it, but what did you really get? You gained the world, but you lost something of who you are. And it has everything to do with how you treat people, relationships. all that sort of stuff. And so here, this is not like, okay, I got a Christian card. I signed up and I said, I'm a true believer, and you better believe me, I'm a true believer. And now we get a pass every time we do things in Jesus' name, even though it's the same games that the world plays. We're playing it on a Christian game board, and now it's okay. That happens all the time. Remember, this is in the context of a crowd stepping on each other because they want to get close to Jesus. Really, I do. Sorry, bro, but not too much. Give us what we need today for food, Lord, and forgive us for the way we keep stepping on, and forgive us help us to extend forgiveness to someone that stepped on us. Again, it's the world we live in. And we can choose to live a different way, or we can just keep staying in the same kind of rut. But it's not about playing the world game versus playing the Christian game. Because quite frankly, if we don't allow the nature to change, wow. I kept thinking, I got lots of time. Sorry, folks. I got lots of time. But not nearly as much as I thought. The clock stopped back there. I thought I was in the twilight zone. I was just like, whoa, this is great. I've gotten most of my message in, and I can tell a joke or two. There's a lot of game playing. The same, remember Jesus said, beware of the religious games of the Pharisees. He said that to his disciples, and then he said, watch out for every form of greed. There's lots of forms of greed, and a lot of it happens in the church. And it's not always about money. There's something more important than money. It's power. It's the prestige. It's the whatever. Just watch out, because Jesus is not saying you can buy friends. He's not saying you can use your Christian money, give to charity, and you will have friends. It just doesn't work that way. Jesus did say, verse 9, I say to you, make friends for yourselves by means of the mammon of unrighteousness, that when it fails, they may receive you into eternal dwellings. But when he says that, the mammon of unrighteousness, oh man, I keep looking at that clock like it's going to tell me something different. Guess what? This is going to be a two-parter. But at any rate, the mammon of unrighteousness is basically just money. Don't think the stuff in your wallet is, mine's righteous. I got it legally. Of course you got it legally. It's not immoral, unrighteousness. It's amoral. In other words, money is just money. It can be used for good things or used for bad things. It doesn't have a moral connotation. It's just money. Jesus is saying use your money in a moral way, in a way that you would make friends, build relationships. You know what it's always going to be about. You don't need me. It's always going to be about love, isn't it? Always. The goal of our instruction is love. Let's talk cash. Say you had $100,000 right now. I know, dream big, but $100,000 in cash, $1,100 bills, and you walked out here, and it wouldn't take you that long, I don't think, in Fresno to find 1,000 people living on the streets and give every one of those people $100. Do you think that you would now have 1,000 friends because you just gave out $100,000? They'd all say, all of them would say, thank you. Most all of them would say, you're my friend, you're my brother, and some of them might actually do better because of that. I don't know. I'm not trying to make a commentary on that. I'm just trying to say, I think you know that you can't count on those 1,000 people to come through for you because now you invested in them, because the fact is that many of them have mental disease, and there are different ways in which, they're broken in different ways. Here's my point. It's not that simple. You're not going to get 1,000 friends by going out and giving $100 to 1,000 people. It's not that simple in this world. I hope you know that. It's not that simple in heaven either. It's not a game. It's not something that you just do. In other words, if you give $100,000 to charity, Does that mean when you get to heaven, you're going to have 1,000 friends all saying, hey, you contributed to our cause, we're your friend? If that were so, you're just buying friends. You cannot buy friends. You can't do it on earth. You think you can do that in heaven? Remember 1 Corinthians 13? Love. If I give all my possessions to feed the poor, and if I don't have love, it's nothing. You can't buy friends. True wealth is true friendship. And it has to have everything to do with love and forgiveness. It can't be calculating. When you give, you don't let your left hand know what your right doing. If you're calculating on the Christian game board and investing for the kingdom, you're just calculating. And boy, will you be disappointed. You get there to heaven, and where's the crowd? For he's a jolly good fellow. Don't you know how much money I gave? Where is everybody? I never met him. I never talked to him. I said I loved him. I must have loved him. I gave some big checks. It doesn't work that way. The best use of money is to invest in friends, invest in family, invest in helping them to know the value and the treasure. And it may be as simple as some of the gifts that we give at Christmas. There's countless ways to do it, but it's not buying friends. You can't buy friends. It's investing in friendship, investing in relationships, investing in people. And you know what? You're going to have to think, and you're going to have to pray in order to apply this parable. Darn. I wanted one more easy thing where I could just know, cha-ching! Not just hit the lotto, but hit the heavenly lotto. I just wanted to put a big check in and then just check out, and then woo, am I going to have a big heavenly reception? No, it doesn't work that way. You're going to have to work with people. You're going to have to get to know people. You're going to have to find that in your sincere desire to get closer to Jesus, you might even step on a few people, and then you're going to have to say sorry. You're going to find other people are going to step on you, but that's life. That's what the real family wealth is, the wealth of a family that learns to work together. And you know what? This is hard, but we're not splitting. We're not dividing some dead body. We're not dismembering it and say, well, we each got something. No, until we learn to love, we got nothing. That's the real wealth. That's the real opportunity of life. Chapter 15, the prodigal son, that family that falls apart and you don't know where it ends. That's a story of family wealth. This chapter 16, can you hear the wrath of God? The thunder of chapter 16 is just business. It's worldly wealth. And when you put those two together, like they are put together, 15 and 16, where do you want to invest? Do you want to invest in that family? It's a dysfunctional family. There are problems there, but look at the father. Do you want to invest in chapter 15, or do you want to invest in the world where maybe everyone's a little crooked? It's just, where are you going to put your heart? There is a great financial eclipse coming. Not a financial collapse, a financial eclipse. Jesus said, when it's eclipsed, not if, when it's eclipsed, where are you going to go? Because someday soon, something's going to come in between us and our money and our economy, and we're going to wake up to realize there was the real wealth. And either it'll be the light of a brand new day, I'm glad I invested in great ways, or else it's going to be shadow and darkness, because you know what? What I really was hoping in is now eclipsed. And that's what Jesus is warning about. I got all the time in the world. The clock stopped. I have an old friend that I just recently met who is really wealthy. I've seen it. He's a retired professor from Harvard, a professor of finance. He was the chair of something. I went to his office. I saw he's got the chair. They gave him the chair. And there it is, engraved, the university. And when I say I've seen it, I'm not saying he drives a fancy car, because you know what? He doesn't drive a car at all. In fact, when I first met him, he couldn't even walk. And it's not because he's really, really healthy, because he's not. And as far as how much money he has, if he thought money could cure his disease, he wouldn't have much money for long, because there's lots of people who will say, we've got the cure, and you can blow billions real quick. But you know what? I'm sad to say he's got a sickness that there's no cure. But I've gone to his office, and not just the chair he has. I've seen his wall of wealth. And it's not, placards and Harvard and Ivy League. I've seen his wall of wealth because the whole wall of his study is covered with pictures of friends and family and kids and people. I don't know who they all are, but they know him and he knows them. And that's where I saw something of his wealth. I saw it with his wife. When I first met the two of them, even though there was sickness, there was something in their eyes. They love each other. She's committed to him. He's committed, no matter how sick, to till death do we part. And I see stuff like that, and I go, wow, this guy is really, really wealthy. And my encouragement to you today is that each of you can be. I pray that you would be. You don't have to be a Harvard professor of finance. I pray that you would be equally wealthy. And the way that you can be is to start by knowing you're equally valuable. You're precious to God. Sometimes we aim so low because we see ourselves in such a low fashion. Go back to the stories of the lost coin, the lost sheep, the lost son. Look up, Father. And then look around, our Father. And oh, Lord, Father, my brothers and sisters and me, we're messed up in so many ways, but you're so good. And then as that starts to gel in your heart, invest in family, invest in relationships. And sometimes that means money. But you can't make it by just giving it. But as you give yourself, as you invest the life that God gives you in the lives of others, that's real wealth. And that's what Jesus, I believe, is trying to tell us.
First bright light of promise brought out to the darkness where you found me. I remember the way that word that found me refined me through the fires of passing trials. Though heaven and earth pass away, these moments spent with you endure forever. Though memory may fail to remind me, you'll remember these moments with me. Sing of the wondrous works of the Lord. Sing of the wondrous works of the Lord. Bondage, drowning all the fears that followed hard behind me. I remember you walked me through the barren sands and called me into promised lands with you. Though heaven and earth moments spent with you endure forever.